from everywhere in the world. Most ISPs give us our data. My hobby has been exploring the dark web. And so what I've been, started off a few years ago, 2009, well 2003, I started volunteering for Tor. There's a very early post on Slashdot where Roger Dingledine posted, hey, here's a tarball. I was like, well, that's useless. I mean, great, here's some source code. 99.99% of the world can't do anything with it. So I compiled it and sent it back to him, and he ran it. And I was like, talking about blind trust. So since then, so the Rogers response to that was, hey, let's have dinner. So we had dinner, and he's like, hey, how would you like to compile all the software for all of Tor? And I said, well, it's not, I have a day job, but sure. So I had a B box. Anyone remember BOS? So I had one of those. I compiled Tor for it, and that was also useless because 99.99% of the world doesn't run BOS. And so I got a Mac, I got a Windows machine, and I had a bunch of weird Unix machines, and I started compiling Tor for all these platforms. If you downloaded Tor.exe or Tor browser from about 2004 on, you used my artisanal, hand-cuddled, crafted, hugged binaries that released about every couple of weeks, given Tor's release cycle. Yeah, okay.
You want me to find your book?
Well, I need HDMI.
Oh, no, we don't have
I've got an adapter. I have no idea if this will work for you.
Do you have USB to HDMI? Is that
Not
USB?
USB, like it's like mini.
Yeah, I don't have that.
You know the mini DV?
I have USB.
Just USB.
Anyway, so the title of the talk is basically exploring the dark web, mostly for fun, sometimes for profit. As Paul mentioned back in 2006, when Tor was trying to figure out should it go for profit or non-profit, I sat down with them and talked to them about, well, if the goal is to release a source code, the goal is to do good in the world, then you should be a non-profit, because that's how people in the world think. If you're for profit, everyone will wonder, what are you doing, why are you giving this code, who's the product? In 2009, the State Department gave Tor $1.5 million. And when you give $1.5 million to two MIT master's students, guess what they do with it? They do research, and they produce white papers. And the State Department said, no, we paid you a lot of money to actually produce stuff because people in the world want to use this. And they said, great, here's a tarball. So I was the secretary and treasurer of the Tor project, which is a 501c3 nonprofit. I had a conversation with our program manager at the time. His name is Sarah. She's now gone off to counterterrorism stuff. And she said, please, would you quit your job? And I said, well, I work for a public company. We make a lot of money. You can't afford me. She said, okay, well, we'll try and find you some more funding. So I did. The first thing you run into when you're in Tor at that time was it's slow. It's still slow compared to the native web right now. But 2004, 2009, it was painfully slow. You would wait 5 to 10 minutes for a page to come back, and then you want to click on something else, and you didn't have an hour to kill to browse 2 pages. So the first thing I did was I used my employer, who had a bunch of build machines, and we performance profiled Tor to find out why it was slow, what it was doing, down to the code level. Since then, Tor has gotten much faster, mostly because the number of relays has increased. The number of exit relays in particular has increased. It doesn't matter how many relays there are. For 99% of browsing on Tor, it matters the exit relays. If you can't get out of the network, it doesn't matter how fast you get to the end. You're still bottlenecked at the end. Even with 7,000 relays or so today, there are still about 1,000 exit relays that allow traffic out. I run some of those. A number of organizations run those. Some of the organizations, well, most of the organizations and most people record the Tor exit traffic. They may not tell you that. They don't want to publish it, because people who have published their exit traffic in the past have been basically bullied into not publishing it ever again. And now ethics boards at universities don't allow publishing of the data because the users couldn't opt in. How a user opts in on an anonymous network to be part of the subject is a whole other question. My first commit, Roger gave me the commit bit in December 25th, 2004. At 6 in the morning, according to Git. My first commit went through. So guess what I was doing Christmas Day 2004? I was trying to fix bugs in Tor. Since then, I've done a bunch of press interviews, been all over the place. The interesting parts of what I've done is, so quickly, Tor gets, I've moved on beyond Tor. There are a number of dark webs out there. Which one you look at matters to who you're trying to find. Tor just has been in the news a lot, mostly because of Silk Road. If you look at the graph of Tor searches and onion browsing searches on Google, as soon as the Silk Road became popular, all these people started going to find out, what is this Tor thing? How do I get to Silk Road? Holy crap, I can buy drugs on the internet. And not from the sketchy teenager down the street. There are a ton of other dark webs. There's Perfect Dark, which is a big Japanese language, mostly anime sharing network. It's not used much beyond that. It hasn't had much research to see how secure or not it is. There's Freenet, which actually was vastly more popular than Tor for the early 2000s. Freenet's file sharing. It takes your bits and then blows them up into a million computers. So you get plausible deniability of what's on your devices. At the same time, it's all encrypted and you can recover it to get your files back. There's of course Tor, there's I2P, which is garlic routing, and it goes on. There's RetroShare, GNUnet, ZeroNet, Cindy, OneSwarm, and Dribbler are the big sort of overlay networks that are used in the world. Each one sort of has their own community and how they use them. How you want to investigate. If you need to go investigate crime or whatever, then you need to go figure out which network they're using. A lot of the times, the problem law enforcement has is that there are so many technologies out there to use, the criminals only have to master one, law enforcement has to master all of them. And I'll tell you right now, law enforcement's failing to master all of them because new ones keep coming up. Just like botnets, just like ransomware, someone creates a library, sells the library, and then 20 more versions come out, and they're all slightly different than the original. So you have to go kind of figure out what's going on, who's doing what, and then look into it and try to understand. The try to understand part takes time. What gets really frustrating having worked with investigations is that something's going to happen by a stated date and time. I'm thinking of the person who emailed a bunch of universities, said we planted bombs on your university and we're going to detonate them off at the following times. You now have a finite time to go find the person, figure out who it is. They all came through Tor. They came through Guerrilla Mail and others, which they use Tor to get to Guerrilla Mail. So by the time law enforcement goes, hey, here's Guerrilla Mail, here's Tor, oh crap, it's Tor address. Now I'm going to go figure out who has the motive, who has the thing, what the speech patterns are, and meanwhile the clock is ticking to when these bombs may or may not go off. Luckily there were no bombs, it was just some disgruntled person, but you don't actually know that at the start. There's also the case of the Harvard student, I just forgot his name, Kim, who used Guerrilla Mail to do Tor. What you discovered in that was that he used Tor to get to Guerrilla Mail to set up a bomb threat to evacuate just before his final exam because he didn't study. What happened was that there was so little Tor usage on Harvard University's network, they just went and interviewed everyone who was on Tor at the time that the threat was sent. It's like a handful of people, and he confessed. Because when you have two FBI agents come right at you, along with Harvard University police and a bunch of other people, if you're a real criminal, you pass it off and you don't, you say, whatever, I use Tor to browse porn. He said, yes, I did it. And that made it pretty clear who did it. What I have here that you can't see is the cool graph of, based on Google Zeitgeist, about who's querying for what over time. I2P is about 3 times that of Tor until around the Pirate Bay, or the Silk Road. And then Silk Road flipped it so that Tor became more popular than Freenet. All the other ones I mentioned, RetroShare, GNUnet, Zero Knowledge and all that stuff, that's barely an error message, a little blurb on the bottom. What's also interesting is which regions use which dark webs. Who do you think is a top country for Tor usage?
US. China.
Bangladesh. Why Bangladesh? I have no idea. But this is what everyone's looked at. Norway's number 2, Italy's number 3, Germany's number 4, then comes Syria at number 5, and then Pakistan, and then Poland.
Oh.
Why? I don't know.
Because Max Mine's databases.
Yes, it could also be Max Mine's database questionable.
The borders are a little.
Top countries for I2P are Russia and the Ukraine, and everything else is like an error, within a margin of error. Freenet is almost all Germany. There's almost no usage or queries or anything about Freenet or anything else besides Germany. RetroShare is heavily French and German, but actually when you look at it in more detail, it's more like the Alsace-Rhone region, which is sort of the border of France and Germany. And the new net is mostly France and Germany because the people who develop it are German. So in 2014, I started crawling .onion sites. Just fired up Apache Solar, fired up some scripts, had them just suck everything I could find into a database. Since 2014, I've crawled 114,000 roughly unique .onion domains. Why did I start doing this in 2014? Because I went to a conference at the European Monitoring Center for Drugs and Drug Addiction. It's about symposium on drugs and the internet. And there were a number of researchers there. The number one complaint they all had was that they can't reliably crawl Tor or I2P websites. Partially this is because hidden services are just unreliable. They go up, they go down, the technology's slow, and crawlers aren't that patient. 2, because they didn't fully understand what they were doing. They were trying to take like a standard crawler and just point it at a .onion and hope it worked. And for the most part, it doesn't, as anyone knows who crawls the dark web forums now. And then trying to crawl things like Tribbler and OneSwarm, which are BitTorrent based, became even more of a challenge. So I helped them, in those couple days, I helped them set up a crawler and pointed their forums at it and just let it go. The other thing we did was we took the hidden wiki. There are about 27 hidden wikis that are out there, but we took the hidden wiki, because that's what everyone said it was, seeded the list of domain names, and just let it start going. In about 6 months, we found 15,000 new hidden services that are linked in forums or linked through affiliate networks where they show up for 1 day or 2 days or whatever. It's one .onion linking to another, so you get a really cool graph, which you won't see, which says, here's like the source site, here's those other sites it talks to, here's all the other sites they talk to, just a standard like link diagram of who talks to who, how often they talk, and where it went from there. So what do you think is the first problem you run into when you start crawling a bunch of .onion sites, besides the fact that they're wholly unreliable? You find a lot of child abuse material. Shockingly fast, shockingly unencrypted, shockingly unprotected by credentials. There's no login stuff for this. You start running into it. You might want to show you, but no, I'm not going to show you child porn. But it's a picture of a girl holding a My Little Pony. It's one of the ways when law enforcement does go after child abusers, there's the image of the kid. You can almost block out the image of the kid because everything else in the image matters more. What are they wearing? What's the background? What are they holding? How are they doing? We actually collected so much of this stuff. I went to go talk to DHS and said, oh, so how do you anonymously, how do you tell DHS, by the way, I've collected a bunch of child porn by accident, but I don't actually collect any child porn, I don't hold it whatsoever, because that would be illegal. Thankfully, I ran into 2 agents who were part of the child exploitation and obscenity section of the DOJ, and they had some lawyers work with me. I learned that the definition of child abuse materials and child porn is different than one would think it is, and the laws regarding it are incredibly strict, and even most law enforcement agents, I think it's Title 18, whatever section it is, don't have the ability to even do it. And they were happy to take it off my hands and set up a server so I could do all their child porn crawls on their systems, not mine, under their jurisdiction. So